Hello and welcome. You have tuned into World Business Report here on News 9 Live, where we get you all the latest in the world of business, economy, technology, finance, entertainment, and lots more from all across the world. I am Krishnakumar. And we begin with a big story that's coming out from the European Central Bank, which held its meeting and also it held its interest rates for the fifth straight meeting amidst concerns over rising inflation over the US. In fact, the European Central Bank defied all that was happening on Wall Street in the US over higher than expected, hotter than expected US inflation data. But the ECB, contrary to the possibility of no rate cuts in the US, has even signaled that the first rate cut from the European Central Bank could come in the month of June this year, even as it continued to hold its current interest rates at record highs at the same level. Take a look.
The Governing Council decided today to keep the three key ECB interest rates unchanged. The incoming information has broadly confirmed our previous assessment of the medium-term inflation outlook. Inflation has continued to fall, led by lower food and goods price inflation. If our updated assessment of the inflation outlook, the dynamics of underlying inflation, and the strength of monetary policy transmission were to further increase our confidence that inflation is converging to our target in a sustained manner, it would be appropriate to reduce the current level of monetary policy restriction. In any event, we will continue to follow a data-dependent and meeting-by-meeting approach to determining the appropriate level and duration of restriction, and we are not pre-committing to a particular rate path. I have said in the past that we are data dependent. We are not Fed dependent. That was not the Fed, that was CPI numbers. And obviously, anything that happens matters to us and will in due course be embedded in the projection that will be prepared and released in June.
All right, away from Europe to the US, where on Wall Street, US stocks ended sharply higher with the S&P and the Nasdaq up while the Dow remained unchanged. And all of that after the downfall that happened just a day before due to the hotter than expected inflation data that hit markets and their concerns and their hopes of a possible rate cut in the near future. The rise of tech stocks was very important in the rebound on Wall Street. This Reuters report gets you a detailed understanding of all that happened in the trading session.
U.S. stocks got a boost Thursday after fresh economic data rekindled hopes that inflation remains in a downward trend. The Dow finished flat, while the S&P 500 ended 0.75% higher, and the Nasdaq soared nearly 1.7%. The Producer Price Index, or PPI, came in softer than expected, supporting the narrative that inflation is still cooling. Just a day earlier, hotter than expected CPI data sent stocks sharply lower and benchmark Treasury yields to their highest level since November. While the PPI data was more encouraging, it did indicate that inflation's downward journey might not be on a fast track to the Fed's annual target rate of 2%. Liz Miller, founder and president of Summit Place Financial Advisors, says investors may be focusing too much on individual pieces of data and not enough on the overall health of the economy.
I think after the PPI print this morning, investors are rethinking how they recently interpreted the higher CPI information that we had this month. We're really seeing that the bond and stock markets may have overreacted on the downside. The economy is on the right trend, and these stocks are now rebounding today to reflect that investors are being more thoughtful about the longer trend of the economy.
Tech-related momentum stocks led the charge on Thursday, with Apple and Nvidia both finishing more than 4% higher. Shares of CarMax slid 9% after the company missed analysts' estimates for fourth quarter results and said it might not meet its long-term vehicle sales target. Shares of Globe Life tumbled 53% after Fuzzy Panda Research disclosed a short position in the company, alleging multiple instances of insurance fraud. And shares of Rent the Runway skyrocketed more than 160% after the apparel rental company said it was betting on artificial intelligence to power its current year growth.
Now, keeping it with the US and technology giants, where Apple has sent out a huge warning to its users across 92 countries, including India, that they may have been the victims of a quote-unquote mercenary spyware attack. An attack that is trained to gain remote access to the users of iPhones in over 90 countries. Now, Apple has issued a threat notification, and as part of that threat notification, Apple said that mercenary spyware attacks like NSO Group's Pegasus are exceptionally rare and vastly more sophisticated than a regular cyber criminal act, or for that matter, a consumer malware. Now, that threat notification from Apple explained that mercenary spyware attacks, like the ones that is mentioned, are meant to target specific individuals. That notification said that users will receive, and I quote over here, "This attack is likely targeting you specifically because of who you are or what you do." That's what Apple said in that threat notification. Apple also stated that these attacks cost millions of dollars and are individually deployed against a very small number of people. Apple has advised its users to be cautious with all the links that they receive and not to open any links or attachments from unexpected or unknown senders. Apple also updated its support page to include tips for users who had been possible targets and who could be possible targets going forward. However, Apple maintained that it was unable to provide more information about what caused it to send this threat notification, as that could help mercenary spyware attackers adapt their behavior to evade detection in the future. Shifting focus away from that to the Olympics that's coming up in Paris in this year, 2024. And even before we hit Olympics time in June, July, it's already ad sales that are hitting record highs. Broadcaster NBC Universal, which paid a record sum of over $7 billion to renew its Olympics contract up until the year 2032, has already sold millions of dollars of ad sales at record prices, and it's expecting a blockbuster Paris Olympics. This report tells you all about it.
US broadcaster NBC is on track to hit a new ad sales record in Olympic history, as fans are expected to fill stadiums for the first time since the COVID-19 pandemic. Comcast-owned NBC Universal said on Tuesday it has already sold $1.2 billion in advertising for the Paris Games. That's just shy of the $1.25 billion sold for the 2020 Tokyo Summer Olympics before it was postponed. The company paid $7.65 billion to renew its broadcast rights deal through 2032. It's the largest single source of revenue for the Games. Ad spending from sponsors of the International Olympic Committee, or IOC, is currently up 18% compared to the Tokyo Olympics, according to NBC. Visa, Toyota, and Procter & Gamble are all among major brand sponsors. They pay upwards of an estimated $100 million for the right to use the famous Olympic rings in their marketing materials. NBC says more than a fourth of its revenue so far, some $350 million, is from brands buying Olympic ads for the first time, and that they believe the hike in ad spending was thanks in part to Paris being the first Olympics without any COVID restrictions since the pandemic. It's also a more favorable time zone for American audiences after 3 Olympics in Asia. As for digital advertising, NBC says revenue for Paris has already surpassed any past Olympics, and it's following a viewer shift away from TV. In a Summer Olympics first, every Paris event will be on its streaming service Peacock. The company has also struck deals to post clips on X and Snapchat. Some major brands have told Reuters they're foregoing broadcast ads altogether, including Intel and tire brand Bridgestone. According to Bridgestone's chief marketing officer, quote, "The days of big TV campaigns are behind us."
Shifting focus away from US broadcaster NBC Universal and the Paris Olympics to China, where it looks like iconic founder and entrepreneur Jack Ma seems to be back in the spotlight, and him being back in the spotlight and emerging out of the shadows he's been for over the last year or two has meant that shares of Alibaba listed in Hong Kong have seen a huge surge. What is going on? How is Jack Ma back, and how is that impacting Alibaba shares? This Reuters report tells you all about it.
Jack Ma just might be making a comeback. The Alibaba co-founder has penned a rare and lengthy memo to employees. In it, he expresses support for restructuring efforts at the e-commerce titan. Some saw that as a signal he's ready to play an active role again after years out of the spotlight. Ma largely disappeared from public view after making a speech critical of Beijing regulators in late 2020. A massive share sale for financial firm Ant Group, which he also founded, subsequently got cancelled. That was followed by a regulatory crackdown on the whole tech sector, with Alibaba fined $2.8 billion. Ma has since spent much of his time abroad, including in Tokyo, where he is a visiting lecturer at a university institute. Now the hint of a return comes after a turbulent year for Alibaba. 12 months ago, it said it would split into 6 units, marking the biggest shake-up in its 25-year history. It later announced, then cancelled, share sales for 2 of the divisions and installed a new chief executive. In his internal message, Ma praised company boss Eddie Wu and the move to split into 6. He also said the firm needed to have the courage to admit and correct past mistakes. Alibaba's Hong Kong shares surged around 5% on Wednesday amid investor hopes that Ma's comeback could now be in the offing.
Now, keeping from China to Taiwan, where TSMC, the world's largest semiconductor chip maker, has posted over $6 billion in sales, its fastest monthly sales growth since November 2022. So, and what is driving TSMC's phenomenal sales is the boom in AI, or artificial intelligence, and the consequent rising demand for AI chips, which TSMC is able to provide for. And TSMC, bear in mind, is Asia's most valuable publicly listed companies, and these latest sales figures have seen a huge boost for TSMC's share price as well. This report tells you all about it.
TSMC's first quarter sales soared thanks to the artificial intelligence boom. The Taiwanese chipmaker reported a 16.5% rise in revenue on Wednesday. That beat market expectations and was at the high end of the company's own guidance. The world's largest contract chipmaker includes Apple and Nvidia as customers. Surging demand for AI products has helped push its stock towards a record high. Revenue in the first 3 months of the year came in at just over $18.5 billion, well up from a year ago. The first half of the year is traditionally quieter for Taiwanese tech firms. That as it comes after the end-of-year holiday rush for goods like tablets and smartphones in major Western markets. But the AI trend is boosting demand even in the off-season. For March alone, TSMC reported revenue rose about 34% year-on-year to over $6 billion. The company did not provide any details or forward guidance in its brief revenue statement. Its shares have surged 37% so far this year.
Right, away from that to the world of aviation, where the probe into the mid-air blow-off of a door on an Alaska Airlines flight, which indeed was a Boeing 737 MAX aircraft, that probe is continuing and it's widening because watchdogs in the US are now trying to assess the cause of that mid-air blow-off of the 737 MAX jet. Bear in mind, immediately after that 737 MAX blow-off, those flights were grounded. But right now, US watchdogs are expanding the probe, especially with concerns over missing records from the makers of the 737 MAX, which is Boeing. However, US watchdogs are saying that Boeing is cooperating with this probe. This report tells you more.
US watchdogs are conducting new interviews as part of their probe into the mid-air blowout on a Boeing 737 MAX. The National Transportation Safety Board says its investigators are back at the plane maker's plant in Renton, Washington. They're trying to establish exactly what happened to the door plug that blew off the Alaska Airlines jet. Boeing has said records relating to the fitting of the part were never created as they should have been. The NTSB says it still can't determine which workers fitted the plug, which they have previously said was missing key bolts. They haven't been able to interview the manager of the relevant team, who has been on sick leave. However, the watchdogs say their probe is about the process, not the individuals involved. They say missing records are the big concern, and they don't want to do a gotcha on any worker. The agency says Boeing is cooperating well, as it too wants to figure out what went wrong. No one was killed in the January blowout, but the Federal Aviation Administration grounded MAX planes for some time afterwards. It has also capped production while Boeing takes steps to improve quality control.
And we are keeping it with Boeing because there are now fresh trouble brewing for Boeing after all that scrutiny over the 737 MAX aircraft. Now the lens is on the Boeing 777 and 787 aircraft, and that's because a brand new whistleblower has emerged who has flagged off safety concerns on Boeing 787 and Boeing 777 aircraft. He said that there might have been shortcuts that have been taken to manufacture these aircraft, and this new whistleblower happens to be one of Boeing's own engineers. This report tells you all about it.
Boeing faces a deepening crisis over its attitude towards safety and quality. On Tuesday, the Federal Aviation Administration confirmed it was investigating allegations by a whistleblower. Company engineer Sam Salepour says he saw unsafe practices in the production of wide-body 787 and 777 jets. He says some parts were the wrong size and other areas of the planes didn't meet specifications. Salepour says Boeing used shortcuts to try to clear bottlenecks in output and ignored his warnings. At one point, he says he saw workers jumping up and down on bits of the planes to try to get parts to align. He says some practices put excessive stress on major joints in the aircraft. Boeing called the claims inaccurate and said it had full confidence in its products. However, the allegations come with the plane maker already in turmoil. They follow the mid-air blowout on one of its 737 MAX jets in January. The FAA has subsequently capped output of the planes, while Boeing takes steps to improve quality control. Salepour is now expected to appear before a congressional committee investigating the apparent quality lapses at Boeing. The engineer says he has faced retaliation by the company since he first raised his concerns.
From aircraft maker Boeing to airline carrier Lufthansa, which has now completely stopped flights to Tehran. Bear in mind, is one of the few Western airlines still flying to Tehran, and now after announcing a suspension on April 6th, which is meant to exist till the 11th of April, now that suspension has been extended, which effectively means that Lufthansa will not be flying to Tehran, and owing to concerns over a possible attack from Tehran on Israel after Israel's attack on Iranian embassy in Syria. The rising Middle East tensions has now put an effective stop to Lufthansa's flights to Iran. More in this report.
Lufthansa extended the cancellation of daily flights from Frankfurt to Tehran to April 13th on Thursday. It said the decision was made to avoid a situation where the airline's crew had to stay overnight in the Iranian capital. The German carrier suspended flights to Tehran due to the situation in the Middle East on Wednesday. The region is on alert for possible Iranian retaliation for a suspected Israeli airstrike on Iran's embassy in Syria. Lufthansa said it was constantly monitoring the situation in the Middle East and in close contact with authorities. The carrier also reached a key deal on Thursday after months of negotiations. It struck a wage agreement covering 19,000 flight attendants. The deal with cabin union UFO includes a 16.5% wage increase over 36 months. It will also add an inflation compensation payment of €3,000 or more than $3,200. Some 20,000 UFO staff at Lufthansa and subsidiary CityLine stopped work for a day last month. That caused around 1,000 flight cancellations, affecting 120,000 passengers.
Away from that to Uniqlo, the famous fashion brand, has now posted soaring profits up over 7% to over $721 million for the quarter. What exactly is driving Uniqlo's profits and what exactly is driving its bullish forecast of more profits going forward? This Reuters report tells you all about it.
Uniqlo owner Fast Retailing said Thursday that it clocked profit growth of 7% for the second quarter. That was slightly short of market estimates. But the Japanese retailer stuck to its annual profit outlook, meaning it's on track for a third straight year of record earnings. Known for its fleece jackets and inexpensive basics, Uniqlo is benefiting from a recovery in China, its biggest overseas market. The yen's tumble to 34-year lows has helped too, as it boosts the value of the firm's overseas earnings. Now Uniqlo is targeting aggressive growth in Greater China, North America and Europe. And it's benefiting from a post-lockdown shift in shopping habits, with many consumers opting for value over luxury. The latest results follow a 25% jump in earnings in the first quarter on the back of strong growth in China. With 922 stores on the mainland there, Uniqlo is a bellwether for global retailers operating in the country. Founded and run by Tadashi Yanai, Japan's richest man, Fast Retailing has posted record results for the past 2 years and looks set to extend the streak.
It's not just Japanese fashion brand Uniqlo's profits, but also Britain's largest grossing retail company, Tesco, which has seen its profits surge. And it is saying that profits are surging despite inflation easing. And it's not just about more prices, but about more sales. Take a look at this.
Tesco reckons it's on course to ring up another rise in profit. Britain's biggest retailer on Wednesday reported an 11% jump in earnings for the year. Profit hit about $3.5 billion, slightly ahead of guidance. Tesco says it won new customers, with its market share edging above 27%. Among other reasons, it's been cutting prices to match discount supermarket chain Aldi. The retailer says it also sees signs of consumers feeling more confident as pressure from inflation eases off. Boss Ken Murphy said falling energy prices and strong employment levels had helped underpin demand. That chimes with recent data, which showed rising confidence among consumers over the outlook for their finances. Tesco now forecasts a further rise in adjusted operating profit to at least $3.55 billion for the coming year. The firm will also do almost $1.3 billion in new share buybacks, having already done close to twice that amount. Tesco shares were up around 1% in early trades on Wednesday.
Right, and finally, O.J. Simpson, the former American NFL sports star and sports broadcaster, whose athletic achievements and fame were eclipsed by his 1995 trial in the brutal killing of his ex-wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her friend, has now died of cancer. O.J. Simpson was 76 years old. Simpson's prostate cancer diagnosis was made public about 2 months ago, and the Hall of Fame player had received chemotherapy treatment as well. This report tells you more.
I thought I was a good person, a God-fearing person.
O.J. Simpson, the former football star who was acquitted of killing his ex-wife and her friend, has died at the age of 76. A social media post from his family listed cancer as the cause of death. In what the U.S. media called the trial of the century, Simpson avoided prison when he was found not guilty in 1995 for the stabbing deaths of his former wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and Ronald Goldman in Los Angeles. The two were found fatally slashed in a bloody scene outside Nicole Brown Simpson's home on June 12, 1994. Simpson quickly emerged as a suspect in the murders. He was ordered to surrender to police, but 5 days after the killings, in an infamous car chase through Los Angeles that was broadcast live on televisions across the country, he fled in his white Ford Bronco with a former teammate. He was later charged in the murders. What ensued was one of the most notorious trials in 20th century America and a media circus, which included a memorable blunder by the prosecution when they directed Simpson to try on a pair of blood-stained gloves found at the murder scene, confident they would fit perfectly and show he was the killer. In a highly theatrical demonstration, Simpson struggled to put on the gloves and indicated to the jury they did not fit. On October 3, 2008, exactly 13 years after his acquittal in the murder trial, he was convicted by a Las Vegas jury on charges including kidnapping and armed robbery. Nicknamed the Juice, Simpson was one of the best and most popular athletes of the late 1960s and 70s. After capturing a Heisman Trophy in college and a record-setting career in the NFL with the Buffalo Bills and San Francisco 49ers, he was inducted in the Pro Football Hall of Fame and parlayed his football stardom into a career as a sportscaster, pitchman, and Hollywood actor.
And that's all we have time for in this edition of World Business Report. Thank you so much for watching. This is Krishnakumar signing off.